live. Welcome to Crank 2 Thoughts Film High Voltage. And yes, if you don't care about these disclaimers, I try to keep them short and relevant, but your mileage may vary. You can skip right ahead to the first section via the description box. And this contains spoilers, including for the first one. And I record this as soon as I can get to the computer after watching the movie. If you haven't watched the first movie, and yeah, if you've watched neither of these movies yet, and you're watching this, excuse me, I just gotta fix the lighting setup. There we go. Sorry about that. If you haven't watched either of these movies, you can skip the first one. Basically, like the stuff that you need to know from the first one is summed up in flashbacks in this movie. Now, I probably will swear in this video, but I'm not going to be using the especially offensive words, the racist language and such. But I might quote some of this movie in this video. This video is not a review. This is a series of, well, thoughts. Some of it is analysis, some of it is MST3K riff tracks, and other jokes, etc. Thoughts that I had while watching in chronological order, as well as before watching, and these are separated into the first two sections, time codes in the description box. And then the final section, I get into stuff I think it is worthwhile to get into on Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, IMDb, and Wikipedia. And before recording this vlog, I did not get around to reading the IMDb user reviews, but everything else I read. Although I may have forgotten some stuff by the time I record this, since some of it I read weeks ago, or a month or so ago, some of it. If you're not interested in the contents of all three sections, I invite you to only watch the ones you are interested in. And I have done a regular review of this, like 9 years ago, I guess. And this video is not me saying I'm smarter than you, or know more, or know better than you. The stuff I say in this video, I'm not saying only I could or have thought of it. It's just stuff I want to talk about and think others would enjoy listening to. I may in this video discuss issues that do not affect me, or do not affect me as much as they do certain minorities. I'm not trying to lecture those that these issues affect. In part, I'm speaking to others who are not in those minorities, so we can better empathize with those minorities. And in part, I am expressing my interpretation of the material without claiming it's as valid as the interpretation of members of the minorities. Now, when I talk about the quality of what I'm doing a video on, I try to strike a good balance between being appreciative of both intentions and results, criticizing things I genuinely feel should be criticized, and I try to judge the subject on its own terms. I'm not going to be criticizing this movie for how, this movie is what it wants to be. It is what Mark, Neville Dean, and Brian Taylor wanted it to be. What they set out to do, they pretty much nailed. I doubt they're particularly unhappy with almost anything in this. Now, let's see. And yeah, like I said, I've done, I think, just one other video on this, and the link will be in the description box. And I'm going to try not to restate what I said there. I got this on sale, so anything negative I say in this video is not out of bitterness. I watched some YouTube videos and special features on the DVD before doing this video. And so yeah, I first watched this, I believe, 2011, and this is the first time I've rewatched it since, so this is my second viewing. Now, me making jokes in this should not necessarily be taken as me thinking the thing I'm joking about is actually bad, me wanting to make light of as your subject, etc. I simply find it very difficult not to MST3K and overanalyze everything I watch and play. I believe that I have watched the uncensored version. That was the one I saw, 9 years ago. But the thing is, I sometimes buy through, German websites, and I'm not sure I'm probably going to stop doing that for stuff where I figure they might censor. If it's something that I doubt they'd censor, I might still buy through them. But yeah, I still greatly enjoyed watching it again, but they definitely edited some stuff out. So yeah, if I say something about gore, violence, sex, and or nudity in this video that doesn't make sense to you, it's because we watched two different cuts of the movie. Basically, it was because it was much less, it cost a lot less. Now, I don't have a problem with violence and gore in general. The Thing is one of my favorite horror movies and movies in general. I also love Cronenberg's The Fly. I don't have a problem with film sexuality, nudity, disturbing and upsetting material. In general, Monster is one of my favorite movies. In my opinion, the only way sex can be wrong is if consent is violated and or it is cheating. Now, so yeah, my own quote-unquote film critic rating for this is a 7 out of 10. And I think my personal rating is ultimately also a 7 out of 10. So, let's see. Yeah. I wanted to just briefly say, yeah, before, if the following doesn't interest you and you'll be able to tell almost immediately, you can just skip ahead to one of the sections. Evidently, Trump is very unhappy, among other things, with polls and such. And, but now we also find out that he is very, very happy, very proud that he, basically he passed the test that the doctors gave him to see if he had brain damage. Could he, like, be put in kindergarten, maybe, and just, like, write on the door, best presidents ever, super happy fun time place here, or something like that, and just, tell him that this is where all the best people in the world go when they've done incredibly well at difficult things. This is where they go to be appreciated. And just, like, not Pence, obviously, but, like, just like, lure Pence out with, some mayonnaise or something, and just put, like, I'm not even really asking, it doesn't have to be someone, if it has to be a conservative, just one who doesn't hate people and isn't quite as incompetent. That's really, that would be great. Okay, first section, notes taken while watching. Like with the first one, I don't make any excuses for the various types of offensive material in this. It's definitely intentional. They meant for it to be as offensive as, yeah. I rewatched the first one yesterday, and I enjoyed it more than I did when I rewatched it 2 weeks ago. So, you know, in so yeah, I think it's, I don't know. Sometimes that happens. I feel like in a lot of ways this movie is so much better than the first one. You almost shouldn't watch the first one at all, but there is some value to having watched the first one before watching this one. But honestly, I wish they had just made this one as the first movie. Now, so the first movie opens basically feeling like a POV of someone waking up from a hangover. And it hasn't gotten, like, it isn't as energetic as later, obviously intentionally, and it's not, there isn't as much of a sense of danger, just discomfort. And, this one, like, the first thing we actually see, other than, like, opening, logos, this one opens with an 8-bit, or is it 16, one of those two, video game recreation of the ending of the first movie. And the very first live action image we see is him falling out of the helicopter onto the car, bouncing onto the ground. Now, I will never in a million years complain about seeing John Delancey in anything. I appreciate just how disgusting and nasty they make the surgery. He wakes up part of the way through. You've got these really disgusting sounding noises. You see where they cut his chest open. You've got the cigarette thing, and the replacement heart is just so disgusting. The goo and this, like, I don't know, plastic or rubber or something, just so nasty. And the Asian woman comes in and takes his temperature rectally, just out of spite. Don't tell me that she couldn't have found a less uncomfortable way to take his temperature. And just like in the first, almost immediately, Chev calls Eve. And actually, yeah, the reason that, he calls and it says, like, the number is out of service, and that's because she got a cell phone. She got rid of the landline. And for obvious reasons, she wasn't able to give him the new number. Since, yeah. And Chev takes out the guy who has a shotgun, and in typical video game fashion, he discards a weaker weapon for a stronger one. I mean, usually it would be that you discard, like, a two-handed, like if he was already carrying a rifle or something and then discards it for the shotgun, but still, I appreciate that it is going, yeah, it is very video gamey. And let's see. And, Jason gets a charge for the heart battery with the like, he's got the wires from the car, like he's going to, you know, yeah, not good, clever use of that. And in this one, Chev actually gets in contact with the doctor much sooner than in the first one. And he does the doctor does a relatively substantial spit take when he hears that Chev is still alive. I appreciate that the information about the artificial heart is supposed to be just, like he says, Greek. We're not supposed to actually understand it. I don't know if it's, like, supposed to be a parody of, like, in some action movies they have, like, poorly explained concepts, elements. And man, it looks painful as Chev slides across the concrete, and the battery pack is already destroyed. Really epic as Chev gets juice from the car battery. And yeah, the time I realized for sure that my version is very censored is, basically right before Jason leaves the strip club, because I'm almost certain there's, like, a shootout there, and in my version he shoots one person and interrogates that person and then leaves. So yeah. And the cops were inside a donut place. And now Eve does have a cell phone. And since Chev is in a cop car, the porn actors mistake him for, like, a cop car called, yeah, that works, to break up the strike, so they get angry at that. It's legitimately pretty funny when, Jason sees a kid, like, skateboarding. Ah, crap. I'm not into, extreme sports, so I don't know what it's called, but, it's like, the stairs down, and the handlebars, is that what they're called? And the kid, you know, moves his, like, yeah, down the thing, and Jason tries to do the same thing with just the shoes, and he like slips and falls dick first onto the steel bar. That's gotta hurt. And Chev with the shock collar on is pretty funny. And then the cop, yeah, sorry, and then the cop show up, and the dog attacks the cop, again going directly for the sensitive. Yeah, and I agree. Those guys are such assholes. Don't use shock collars on dogs. Let's see. And Chev meets Venus and pretends, lies to Venus that, that he can get revenge by taking out the ferret. And Chev rubs up against the lead singer of Linkin Park again. Rest in peace. And during the sex scene on the racetrack, one of the horses jumps over the two of them having sex, and Eve looks directly at him. She gets a really close look at an SS Hope. Yeah, that's probably too obscure. I'll, I'll live. And I appreciate that they did what they could to make Johnny Vang as campy and over the top as Ricky Verona. It's hard to say which is the more fun antagonist, but they definitely are both memorable. The full body Tourette's parts are so offensive. I mean, so much in the movie. I'm not going to list every single, excuse me, offensive thing in the movie, but yeah. Many of the triad would have given their own heart out of their own chest to save me. Not me, fuck that, but many. And Chev is told about halfway through the movie why his heart was stolen and who it's for. And Randy finds Eve, and he wants to call the cops on Chev. I really love her just beating him, when he threatens violence against her. Very random how the therapy scene has these erotic undertones, but really glad to see that guy back from the first movie. And yeah, it's so messed up, but I do kind of find it funny, this thing of, my life begins today, and then he stands up and gets hit with the ricocheting bullet. I don't really have anything to say about the Godzilla parody, at least at this point in the video. Maybe later I'll talk about what somebody else said about it, but I personally don't hate the talk show parody flashback. I get what, like, it does go on for longer than it needed to, for sure. I don't know, sir. At least he's being respectful. I mean, the scene between Venus and Rhea is almost sort of sweet. And the ferret is another fun villain. I really love, I want to say, Clifton Collins Jr., especially playing, this sort of role. I really love him in, give me a second, The Rules of Attraction. And we find out that the ferret is the third Verona brother. I mean, the actor's name is Clifton Collins Jr., so I assume that at least one of his, like maybe his father, is Clifton Collins Sr., so what he says about having his fathers, and it is legitimately a funny kind of parody of this sort of thing of, my father's, and my father's father, and his father before him. Which there's definitely too much of in, like, action movie, yeah. I really love how ridiculous the head being kept alive is. He can even still speak. Like, he doesn't have lungs or like, but he can still speak. It's right out of the brain that wouldn't die. A movie so ridiculous, it was on MST3K. excellent effects on the head too. I appreciate that Venus gets to be a badass at least a little before he faces off against the ferret, sorry. I wonder if the sight of Jason Statham on fire was when the decision was made that the duo should make a sequel to Ghost Rider. I realized that, there are outtakes, and maybe it's only my censored version. My censored version has 12 minutes of end credits. That's pretty ridiculous. And actually, again, this is probably, my censored version is 72 minutes long without end credits, 84 minutes long with them. That is very, very short of a movie and long of credits, but yeah. And let's see. See, very frequently this first section is very long, but there's so much in this movie that I can't really talk about it without saying, describing something offensive, even if I'm only relaying the information, and I'm gonna try to not say anything offensive. Yeah, I'm gonna, yeah, I think I've said. Let's say notes taken before watching. I'm gonna try hard not to say anything racist, even by accident. Excuse me. So yeah, let's see, yeah, Neville Dean Taylor, obviously both Crank movies, probably know that by now, and I also watched their Ghost Rider Spirit of Vengeance, and which they directed but did not write. Both Crank movies, they both directed and wrote. And I own a copy of Gamer. I guess 2 weeks from now is when I handle that one. So, and let's see, yeah. So the producers. Let's see. Yeah, and Jason Statham, I've seen him in Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, Ghosts of Mars, the one Collateral, Death Race, the three Transporter movies, the three Expendables movies. And Amy Smart, I've seen in Road Trip, The Butterfly Effect, Mirrors, The Town, and then these two Crank movies. And yeah, Clifton Collins Jr., I've seen in 187 and The Rules of Attraction. Oh, right, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, yeah. Yeah. And Bai Ling, I know from The Crow, Nixon, Wild Wild West. Let's see, Sky Captain, The World of Tomorrow, Lost. Oh, and she's in some deleted scenes from Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. And David Carradine, seen in Bird on a Wire, Kill Bill, both volumes, and Death Race. And Dwight Yoakam, I think the only thing other than the two Crank movies that I've seen him in is Panic Room. So, let's see. Now. So yeah, I guess the reason that they gave him a heart that doesn't have very long charge is because they didn't expect him to leave the hospital anyways. They could keep charging it. That does make sense. As much as stuff in this movie does not really obey the laws of physics. So yeah, as others have noted, this is essentially a live action cartoon. It's very ADD, random, MTV. And like I said of the first one, I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing. I feel like, film critics, basically, it's part of their job description. They have to criticize that sort of thing because it is seen as objectively bad. But, I mean, it's a movie for. I can understand I can see an argument for it being there being a problem with the movie being as offensive as it is. It's, targeting minorities the way it does. But I don't really think I'm not especially going to be making that argument. There are other people who do that, do it better than I would be able to. I think that it's fine to make a movie that's for a, I mean, there's a there's a significant chunk of people who really love these, you know, at least the two Crank movies. A number of them also love Gamer. I don't know. I haven't read the reviews, and yeah, I guess I never did read the user reviews on their Ghost Rider movie, but I can imagine a lot of people love that. I certainly enjoy parts of it for sure. So it really is like the I don't think there's anything wrong with making a movie that's for a specific audience. That's, primarily for, that they really were not looking for mainstream popularity or mainstream appeal with these movies. They would not have gone as crazy as they do if they weren't, but the so yeah, I can see an argument for why it's wrong for it to be as offensive as it is, when really, there are a lot of people who would still enjoy the energy and the randomness and such. If you censored, but they won't watch the movie because it is as offensive as it is. The two things don't have to be, but yeah. I would not especially recommend, if you can only, I think it's worth spending a little more money to watch the don't watch the German version that is censored. It's just, yeah. And it's also just, it's weird some of the time, excuse me, some of what they censor, like, some of the offensive words, they'll, like, bleep or the like, but then several of the, by far the most, offensive of them, they didn't. Like, I don't know, I don't think very many of the racist ones were, it, so that's, yeah. And during the horse race, when the horse jumps over, you get a full view of that thing, so I guess that's not offensive. I think I feel like when Johnny Vang walks in on, Chev getting surgery, doesn't he, like, flick some of the, what's it called? I have no idea what it's called, but when you smoke a cigarette, the very end of it will start becoming like ash, kind of, he gets some of that into the wound. They remove that, but then there's some other stuff that, and like I said, the strip club shootout, which I remember as getting violent, and there's a lot of violence that they either removed or, like, they framed it so that the violence wasn't in frame. And during the end credits, it showed the heart surgery. They just put a big black box covering most of the screen, which I guess is, I mean, if they recut that majorly, they have to also deal with the music being, excuse me, so I guess that's why they would, yeah, I don't know. I feel like every time there's censorship, I feel like there's always a case to be made that they have weird priorities, that some of the stuff that they left in, I'm not sure they removed anything from the racetrack sex scene, for example. I think there are people who would say that's way more offensive than the cigarette thing, for example. But and Bailing getting run over by a car, which I think would be fairly easy to remove without, some of the stuff they censored out. I was like, okay, they definitely removed stuff there. I don't remember exactly what was there, but they definitely censored something. But her getting hit by a car, I guess they didn't think that there was anything wrong with that. That's the problem. The moment you start censoring, you are making active decisions and saying this is definitely wrong, but I guess this is okay. We can leave this in. And it's like, yeah. And I also kind of, I've always really admired people who basically say, fuck the censors. I really kind of wish that what would have happened with this German censor Didi is that they would have pulled a David Fincher on Fight Club where the let me think. I want to say that the original it's basically there's yeah, this is not a spoiler. There is a sex scene between two characters, and at the end of the sex scene, the woman says something, and the original thing that they I I hope I don't get the order wrong, but I think the thing that David Fincher originally shot filmed the actress saying was, I haven't been fucked like that since grade school. And the censors had a problem with this, and I don't especially blame them. And it is a thankless job, but then they could quit that job. Anyway, so he was like, fair enough, I'll change the line. And what he supplied as an alternative was, I want to have your abortion. You could argue whether or not that's any better, but it's different. So I'm not 100% sure which one they ended up using for the final cut of the movie, but I really love how he basically said, "Fuck the censors," and just there's no yeah. So this movie had a budget of 20 million, where the first one had a budget of 12 million. It's wild to me how much bigger this one is than the first one. Like, if you just sit down and, I mean, just for one thing, how many people are shot in this movie compared to the first one? How many, and how big it sometimes gets with the action, and yeah. But, you know, one of the reasons that this movie is as out there as it is, I figure they basically let loose with this one, reassured by how well the first one did, because it really is like the first one. I do still have a lot of love for the first one, but man, is the second one just so much. Again, I'm not. If you think that it's wrong for the movie to target minorities, I 100% understand you, and part of me wishes that there was like a version made that, instead of being, you know, I mean, they would have to change a huge amount of things, but anyway. But as just like, I can appreciate it. It's entertaining in how out there it is. And yeah, like it's almost kind of wild that these are the same people who made the first one, because it goes so much further than the first one. Like, the only thing that I the first one was also very, very, really targeted minorities. But other than that, like, the action's bigger, the set pieces are bigger, the scope is bigger, the concepts are way more out there. There's a lot of stuff where they just really went, like, yeah. Nah. In the first movie, it is ultimately revealed that Chev does have sympathy for you know, basically he quit being an assassin for Eve, and he was gonna go away with her, and the yeah, so I in this one he really there isn't a lot of sympathy for other people. He does still love Eve. He tries to protect her, and you know but yeah, the in the first one he definitely has more of a, although I mean in the first one a lot of the time he's hurting people who aren't actually, who are just random civilians, bystanders. Where in this, it tends to be more that he keeps finding criminals to brutalize. But yeah, for sure he does still, yeah. But that is a fairly common, like part of the appeal of these movies is as comedies, and it's there are a lot of comedy sequels that like this go a lot darker, and where characters who in the first movie were revealed to really have a heart underneath it all, and you know yeah, they're ultimately revealed to be, sorry, yeah, characters who are revealed to ultimately have a heart are in sequels made much more, they're made less sympathetic characters, and that's it's an easy way to get a laugh is to make a character really unsympathetic. In the first movie, you know, despite that it might seem otherwise, ultimately there is no pointless stop on the path. There is no scene that you could completely remove without losing anything at all. I think that is true of this. I think every single time there is at least a little bit of progress. Although when he finally catches up to Johnny Vang, I'm not sure that especially, like, he just realizes that Vang wasn't the one running around with his heart, but the yeah, I'm not entirely certain. Let's see. Yeah, so I watched the trailer, the 2.5 minute trailer. It's a fun trailer, and it's very intense and shows off the humor. I'd say it's a better trailer than the main trailer for the first movie. And let's see. So, let's see. Now, I recommend the video Folding Ideas, Crank High Voltage. In general, folding, Dan Olson is great, but the I quite like one of the first things he says is Crank 2 is the movie where Jason Statham has to keep shocking himself because a bunch of triads stole his heart. That's not a metaphor, is it? No, it's not. That's, I mean, yeah, really, they stole his heart. That you would think that would be a metaphor. And let's see. And he points out, it's not speaking the language of other films. And and he points out it's more like a video game kind of. Okay, so yeah, let's see. Crank High Voltage is less like a story, more like a speed run of Quake. That's an excellent way of putting that. It really, really is, yeah. And yeah, he points out, let's see. Yeah, Chev never so much grows as a character as much as he finds out that the princess is in another castle, or rather, his heart is in another gangbanger's hideout. This movie is aggressive in every definition of the word. It's extremely violent, it's laced with profanity, sex and nudity, and it's racist, homophobic, xenophobic, ageist, sexist, and anti-authority, and then some. And then he points out, I don't think it's anti-intellectual, but only because none of the characters are smart enough for someone else to make fun of them. And yet, for all the insults and aggression, it's not hateful. It doesn't seem to have time for spite or messages. In the Los Angeles Chev Chelios lives, everyone's messed up. Everyone's a sexist, racist, violent pig. But no one has the time to care due to all the sexing and murdering they're busy with. Yeah, and he closes it with saying, and there are no questions except you know what would be fucking sweet? Bai Ling getting hit by a car out of nowhere. That'd be fucking sweet. And let's see. There are a couple of reviewers who did not like the flashback to Chev as a child. And let's see. Yeah, and one critic says it's such a cartoony movie, maybe it should have been a cartoon. I can understand where he's coming from, but I personally think that live action cartoons can be tremendously enjoyable. It's something I also love about the later seasons of, I can't believe I'm blanking on the name, Married with Children, the sitcom. There's just something about when cartoon physics exist in a live action production. It hits harder, and it's, yeah. But I can understand the argument against it. Excuse me. Yeah, the DVD has some special features. One of them is about 4.5 minutes of B-roll, and the some of the footage, when they get, like when they get when they get good footage of a driving scene and the camera is behind the car, it's that I'm not sure if it's both of them or if it's only one of them, which one. So I'm just going to say Neveldine or Taylor is on these inline roller skates with a camera, which I can, again, that the angles and the cinematography is not for everyone, but I personally really think it. Yeah, I think they get some great stuff. And some of the time it's on a remote controlled car with a camera on it, and in some of the B-roll it accidentally flips over. And let's see. Again, I want to just briefly say I really feel like this movie, like the kind of energy and passion, like it felt a bit tamped down in the first one. When honestly, it's mostly when you compare the two, but it's just I've seen a lot of sequels where it isn't that even if the sequel is better, it's not that the I'm on record as loving the first two X-Men movies. Among I love a bunch of the X-Men movies, but I know a lot of people feel like the first one you just you watch it once so you can better appreciate the second one, but the second one for sure the second one is better. And but they're able to do some things that in the second one that they couldn't in the first because of budget, but there's still some stuff in the first one, but in with this one it really feels like I don't know, or maybe they couldn't quite raise enough money. Maybe they thought that they wouldn't be able to. I mean, technically, they're not completely independent movies. It's just that the producers give them a lot of leeway, but they do have some studio backing, as far as I understand. I guess they worried that the studio would balk at what they, or maybe they didn't they I don't know. It's just it's wild how much more far out this movie is than the first one. Now, let's see. In the first one, he takes a lot of drugs, and then in this one, they came up with a lot of different ways for him to like get electricity for the heart. It's and there for sure there are some things where you can really compare, and it's like, well, there's stuff in this that's like bigger versions of what's in the first. In the first one, technically there is a flashback to his mother. It's just only the voice of his mother, and I mean he does look at like I don't know a 10-year-old or something sitting in the back of a car, and I don't know. I guess we are supposed to think that that's like he sees himself in that kid, and I don't know if that's the same kid who plays him in the. I meant to look that up, but I didn't get around to it. So but yeah, the yeah. Let's see, and let's see, I, and that brings us to the review, the text review by Vern the Outlaw. And let's see. And the yeah, I think he puts this very well. Uh, yeah, to set this up, I briefly have to say that he starts by saying that the hyperactive editing and camera work was something he had a hard time getting past about the first Crank. And yeah, and then he goes on to say, and that's maybe a bigger problem I had. The overall douchebaggy attitude of it. The Marilyn Manson going door to door trying to shock people approach to humor. Haha, he said something racist, you're not supposed to do that. Ooh, he raped his girlfriend in front of a bus of Japanese schoolgirls and they took pictures. What a fun time at the movies. Note, I have been informed it's not rape because she eventually liked it, like in Straw Dogs. Yeah, he likes the absurdity of it. Yeah, and he said, he still really can't stand the first one. The Yeah, and about the second one, I guess I would say it's a little better and more enlightened. This time the public sex with his girlfriend is consensual, a step in the right direction, although he does ass rape some guy with a shotgun. Get it? Ass rape? And as far as I could tell, it wasn't even a real bad guy, just a dude he needed information out of. Let's see. And yeah, he says, Statham's character, by the way, has one of those stupid sounding character names, like Desolation Williams in Ghosts of Mars, that I can only assume were put into the script as a placeholder or find and replace typo mishap, and then actually put on film by some kind of impossible to predict chain of coincidences and incompetence. So I won't say the name of this review. To me, he's Detective John Crank, which I really love. That's and his comments are also quite appreciated. Excuse me. And let's see. The camera is still spinning around too much, and this time shot on handheld consumer level camcorders like your nephew's birthday video, but somehow I was okay with the style this time. Don't know if it's more coherent or if I'm just getting used to it. And I kind of, I mean, I like it in the first one as well. I'm not 100% certain how old Vern is, but I think there might be an age gap, and I think that, and I think he, I read his review for Gamer, and he himself points to in one of the comments, he replies to a comment by someone else and says that he might just be a little too old for these movies, which is not, it's not that he doesn't like, he loves some 80s movies, so it's not that other people don't like. So let me think. What's a good example of a thing that he? I think he's apparently like a Steven Seagal fan, or like a or Bruce Willis of the 1980s fan, so something like that. So it's not that he's like too fancy for these kinds of movies, but yeah, as a 90s kid myself, I don't mind. Yeah, I think the hyperactive editing and camera work and such in these movies somewhere between, I don't think there's any of it that I mind, and some of it I really love. I think it works really well in the first one. I'm not sure I can think of a good example off the top of my head for the second one, but in the first one, when he's running out of his place right after watching the Fuck You DVD, he's woken up, he's aware there's this poison, and he's basically like, I gotta hurry, I gotta, move as fast as I possibly can. And he runs down this hallway and around a corner, and like the camera starts behind him and follows him fast, and then gets in front of him and moves away from him, and just it worked really well to capture the energy and the tension of it. Like I thought that worked really well in a way that you just could not get if you didn't have. I'm guessing he was on the rollerblades, for filming that, and it worked. It really, absolutely, you could not have gotten that any other way, basically, and it absolutely captured the sensation from the yeah. Let's see. And instead of a poison, this time his problem is that his heart has been stolen and replaced with a shitty artificial one with a battery that keeps running out or getting stolen, so he has to tase himself or touch a high voltage box to stay alive. It's an even more absurd premise than the first one, and I can get behind that. Even aside from the whole artificial heart thing, I think it's funny that his heart is so powerful and legendary that the villains treat it like the lost ark. Also, they're planning to steal his dick, but fortunately that doesn't get mentioned much. Basically, it feels like a live-action cartoon made by racist ADD skateboard punks obsessed with porn and old video games. Excuse me. Yeah, and he says Biling that describes Biling basically playing a whole movie as the miso horny hooker from that scene in Full Metal Jacket. And let's see. And okay, so I am going to skim their the comment section and see if there's anything that I especially want to comment on. argue over if V for Vendetta is subversive, if the original Star Wars is. Talk about the. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to talk too much. Excuse me. I I feel like I probably covered almost all that I wanted to say about the rape scene in the first movie in the video, in the most recent video I did on the first movie. But this, yeah, the following is something I had not read when I did that video, since it came up when I was researching for this video. And let's see. Yeah, so this is one of the comments. The commenter is apparently called CJ Holden. That's the point. When it comes to the moment that John Crank, I love that name, really starts to have sex with her, she is obviously okay with it, and not in the lame rapist excuse she wasn't fighting against it, but pretty much in the non-rape, okay, I want to have sex too way. She's like, no, we can't have sex in public now, or can we? And let's see, goes on to say, I don't want to deny the scene is questionable, but it's not portrayed as rape. Without a doubt, as a weird male fantasy, Dear Penthouse, today I had spontaneous rough sex in public, but the only difference between this and the typical I hate you, now I love you film scene is that they aren't playing romantic music in the background. I understand every piece of criticism about Crank, but there is no rape scene in this movie. And believe me, I'm pretty sensitive about rape in films, and points out how messed up the ending of 40 Days and 40 Nights is. And that's part of the problem, though. Yeah, it kind of isn't depicted as a rape scene. That doesn't mean that it's not rape. That means that the people making it, they chose to depict it as if it's not rape. It's still rape. He starts to grope her and clearly is about to have sex with her, and she says no repeatedly and struggles as much as she can, and we're supposed to find that funny. She does ultimately agree to it, but it still started out as rape. The fact that, I don't know, I guess, maybe you want to say that by the time he penetrates her, she is into it. It no longer, but it still started out as rape. The the idea that she might eventually be into it doesn't make it okay, and it's a huge problem in, a big part of the reason that there are a lot of people who won't accept what does count as rape is a lot of people will say, well, what if she's into it as well, or I did things that would please her as well, or some people think that it's impossible to rape someone who you used to be with, or even someone you currently are with, like if they are your girlfriend or wife or something. No, still going. That somehow means that you can just use them as if they were like a tool, I guess. It's it's extremely important to the yeah, it's let's see. And Yeah, and one commenter points out, you know, that the Neville Dean Taylor movies feel like crazy and sleazy exploitation movies like that were popular in the 70s. Let's see. And the let's see. Yeah, and compares it to Rob Zombie or Eli Roth's Cabin Fever, Tarantino, Punisher, Warzone, Transporter 2. And it, yeah, there's definitely some of that. The and says that, yeah, and I have to agree with some of the above posters, Vern. You probably aren't going to like Gamer. Spoiler alert, he did not. It's pretty much exactly the version of The Running Man you would imagine the directors of Crank High Voltage making. If there's one thing Neville Dean slash Taylor is, it's an auteur. And I haven't watched Gamer yet, but it definitely does seem like they really, really love doing that one style. Although, I mean, the Ghost Rider isn't as crazy, but then they didn't write that one. Now, let's see. And yeah, the another poster responds to CJ, and among other things says the scene has a kind of misogynistic, sadistic vibe, which makes me feel sort of dirty. And I think that's well put. That's part of it. It is this sort of, we are supposed to revel in how much she doesn't want it at first. So the, oh god, now I sound like it. How much she doesn't want it, and yeah, it's just like the yeah. Let's see. And I think one of the things also that, like, yeah, here, okay, Hunter D, another commenter, says, it's somewhat troubling to me that you guys don't understand that, yeah, the nuance of the rape myth. The reason it's offensive is because she says no, then he smacks her, and then she says yes. The underlying idea being no means yes, and that roughing a woman up is a good way to get her to have sex. And but then does say that, you know, the odd sexual behavior as kinky, not rapey. Let's see. And yeah, and CJ then says, oh, but he doesn't smack her. The worst thing he does in this scene is grabbing her ankle and pulling her back to him. And even then, he has a sad "forgive me, but I don't want to die" look in his face. Like I said, it is a questionable scene, but not a rape scene. And then someone else makes a really good point. I think it's interesting that everybody sees things in that scene that weren't there. Um, I guess I'm going to skip that since perhaps this scene is more revealing than its makers had intended. And yeah. Yeah, and this poster says Doberman might be an interesting film for Vern to check out. I haven't seen if he's done a review of it, but I could definitely see him, yeah. And he notes that it stars Vincent Cassel and Monica Bellucci. That's a really fun film. I gotta watch that again. And but I like the attitude in these Crank movies. Maybe it's that because they just go all the way with it. It's 100% anarchistic. Anything can happen at any turn. Also, I think the ideas and execution are often genuinely creative and original and skillfully made. Excuse me. And now let's see. Yeah, one of the posters refers to Crank as completely harmless, which I don't even know how the I don't understand how any definition of the word harmless can be attributed to a movie by Neville Dean Taylor, but you know, to each their own. And let's see. Yeah, and here Vern does a really good job. You know, really completely no bullshit. This is what the scene is about, the rape scene, the first one. There's no ambiguity about it. It's not just no means yes, but no over and over again, trying to pull away, being grabbed by the ankles, knocking him over. Then, when she tries to see that he's okay, he grabs her. She says, no, 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 starts hitting him on the chest repeatedly. Then he pins her down. She looks like she's crying. Just yeah, and what the fuck, dude? I mean, yes, in the reality of the movie, she decides she likes it and stops fighting. That's why it's not cool, though. Let's see. Not that it would fit the movie if it was Last House on the Left all of a sudden, but the whole reason why it's offensive is that attitude that if you keep raping, she'll eventually be cool with it. Just perform a rape and hopefully it will turn out to not count as rape. Get raping, guys, or non-raping, almost raping. I don't see how the exact time of penetration or the alleged apologetic look in his eyes changes anything. And let's see. Yeah, Vern also says harmless. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not saying that you're wrong for liking this movie. I guess I haven't said that in this video. Now I have. Let's see. Let's yeah, and Leonard Shelby, commenter, responds to Vern, starts by quoting Vern. In the reality of the movie, she decides she likes it and stops fighting. That's why it's not cool though. That's not the reason I gave that scene, regardless of how lame the comedy was at this point. I, parentheses, like to think that Chelios knew his boundaries with Eve and also knew that he wasn't stepping over the line. She proved herself to be something of an exhibitionist in the sequel, and in an admittedly retrospective way, it could possibly be seen to vindicate his behavior a touch. And yeah, let's see. I would, if the movie had established that there was, like, let's say that that a little earlier in the movie, the she wanted to, yeah, let's say that she wanted to have sex in a public place, or maybe said, I still fantasize about having sex in a public place or something. But the fact that you take the sequel and say, oh, but in the sequel we see that she's an exhibitionist, so I guess she probably was in the first one. You can't, that's rationalizing. Now let's see. Now let's see. And yeah, I don't think I'm touching this next comment. It's just, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. And let's see. Yeah, and I think part of it is also just some of these posters say that the like, what's the word? Like, the part of it is, it really didn't have to be the yeah, for those who don't think that it's rape, let's call it sex. It didn't have to be, there didn't have to be sex there. It could have been a number of other things that could have, I've tried to, I mean, at the end of the day, the let's see, the let's see. In the 2 weeks since I did the video on the first movie, I tried to come up with some alternate version of, other things that could take place in that scene instead of a rape, that would still get his, keep the adrenaline pumping. And I do definitely think it's the only time in the entire movie, there are two times where sex is the thing that gets the adrenaline. It's that, and then when she gives him a blowjob in the car, when he's driving around shooting people, that's the full extent. The rest of the time, it's other stuff. You know, it could have there could have been some other. He literally just a few minutes earlier he burned his hand in a waffle iron to, he didn't stick his dick in there. He burned his hand because that would get the adrenaline going. It didn't have to be sex. And if it absolutely had to be sex, I don't see, like I said, there are these people here who are saying, these commenters on Vern's website that say, oh, she ended up liking it, and one said in the second movie she seems to be an exhibitionist. So, well, why not make it her idea then? If you really want, honestly, again, I'm not saying the following is still messed up, but then that is what they're going for. What if it was her idea and he was the one who was uncomfortable about it? What if the like I'm not saying, yeah, see that again, no, that then we circle back to rape. Yeah, it's I don't know exactly. Couple of the things I thought about were maybe, maybe she slaps his face or tells him a lie that's gonna really, says something and then afterwards says it was just a lie. Like, I don't know. Let's the crap. I mean, we don't really know anything that he values other than, well, yeah. Let's say that she she's told, gotta get his adrenaline up, and so she says, I fucked your best friend, and it gives a lot of details, and he gets more and more angry, and then she like, then she asks, did that get your adrenaline going? And he says, yes, and she's like, I lied, you're welcome, or something like that, but it did not have to be a rape. It didn't have to be sexual at all, and yeah, and actually, maybe I mean, part of the thing of it is there's this sort of celebratory, like he's really, once the what's it called, the newspaper machine, whatever, the newspaper thing, and the schoolgirls see it and all that. He's, people are cheering him on, and he's, he shouts out like, I'm alive, or something like that. You could have that sort of celebratory thing if it was just that, yeah, forget the thing about that he doesn't want to. Let's just say that, she finds out he needs adrenaline, and so she, yeah, she says, that fantasy I have about, doing it in public or something, and then, and that, you know yeah, and he's like, oh, that's awesome, and then they start having sex, so it's still problematic. Then it's like, basically, then there are going to be a lot of guys, asking the girlfriend, why aren't you that kinky, or something like that. But at least it would be consensual, and you'd still have, a crowd of people cheering him on, and him, yelling out, I'm alive, and this sort of thing. If it, if you badly wanted it to be sexual, and like I said earlier in this video, I don't have a problem with scenes that are sexual in nature, and I don't actually have a problem with scenes that depict rape. The problem is if it's turned into a joke, or if it's there for nothing other than shock value. Monster is one of my favorite movies, in part because it actually looks at what happens, what the kind of consequences that rape has, the toll it takes on a survivor, and that's something we need more of. It's not that there shouldn't be rape in any movie ever. It's that every time you make a movie where it's a joke or it's erotic or that kind of thing, that it gives a green light to people who already think that that sort of thing isn't that bad. Now, let's see. And I am skimming the last chunk of the commentary, comment section, sorry. And let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm gonna talk more about the rapes in the first movie in this video after this point. So in closing, I just want to point out what a lot of the people who don't hate the rape scene say. It's one thing for them to say that they think it's funny, but a lot of them specifically say they don't think that it's rape. Some of them describe what's in the scene and actually describe it as being much tamer. Some say that rape is okay if it would save a life, in this case, Jeff Chelios. Accuse people who hate the scene saying, oh, if you had to rape someone to save a life, you would. I just think it's noteworthy. Yeah, that was the comment that I didn't go into detail about. I just think it's noteworthy how far a lot of people are willing to go just to avoid having to utter, or in this case, type the words, "That scene depicted rape and it bothered me." I don't think it should have, depicted rape, or at the very least, I don't think it should have made a joke out of rape. Honestly, a lot of them don't even have to say that at all if they didn't make excuses for the rape scene. They wouldn't necessarily be assumed to think that it was okay, but they go out of their way to come up with reasons for why they think it is okay. I've read a lot of comment sections for, you know, movie parodies or movie review sites where a lot of people are extremely unwilling to say that rape is wrong or to acknowledge that certain movie scenes depict rape. I don't think watching rape in movies turns you into a rapist. Studies show that you're not going to imitate what you see. But you know what else those studies do show? That media affects our opinions. If you see something depicted, as not being so bad, or if you see it happen a lot of times, you might eventually think, not have a bad opinion of it anymore. And it would appear that scenes in movies and other media, honestly, sadly, a lot of Western culture that make light of rape, have made a lot of people think that, at least in fiction, rape isn't that bad of a thing. Let me briefly note that I don't hate Western culture, but that is where I know the most about, so it's possible that other cultures are bad with depictions of rape, but it's really baffling to me. I remember there's I'm quite fond of the website The Editing Room, and basically, for those who don't know, they post what they call abridged scripts, and basically, they're almost supposed to be like honest, if this is what the movie is actually like, if you're being completely honest. But then, there are other jokes in there that aren't based on honesty and such, but they I don't love all of their work, but a lot of what they've done is hilarious. And let me just briefly say, that sounded, I'm not saying that they should only have jokes that are based on this is what the movie is, let's be completely honest. There are also there are some incredible jokes that are completely different from that, and I'm not just saying, and they're not saying this is what the movie is like. Let's be completely honest. This is, I don't know. Do Cracked is there's still a Cracked website? I don't know if that's still up. Anyway, they would sometimes link to the abridged script, and they would say, if it was like 10%, well, was it, if it was 10% shorter and 100% more honest or something like that, but the I believe it's the one second. Crap, what's it called? The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I'm not going to be spoiling that movie in this video. There's a scene in that movie that made the in yeah that I yeah I get the let me think. The person writing the script went ahead and made a rape joke there. I'm not, I can't, completely 100%, quote, I didn't memorize it, but it's something along the lines of that. Yeah, it basically says, I'm not saying that he believes the following. I'm saying he said it so that to exaggerate what's in the movie, to make a point about how bad it is. He said that basically, I mean, it's hard at this point to completely avoid. Well, yeah, in the movie, basically, Peter Parker sometimes stalks Gwen, and I don't think they use the word. Do they use the word stalking? It's been a while since I watched it. I think they use the word following, but yeah, and basically, and yeah, so in the abridged script, basically, Peter, you know, yes, says out loud. So there's supposed to be what he's thinking, basically what the character is thinking, and almost what he's saying to the audience. It's not what the author of the script believes, but it's basically he's saying this is what the character believes. Remember, stalking is okay if she's into it, and if she's not into it, that's when you bring out the something like the ropes and the ball gag or something like that. And someone in the comment section said that they were offended by the rape joke, and the actual author put in a comment. It wasn't someone else defending him. Put in a comment saying that's not a rape joke. And it's just it's baffling to me that someone would say that that's not a rape joke. And the only thing, it's like when you hear conservatives claim they're not actually racist. It's not that they think that they didn't do the thing they're being accused of. It's that they think if they insist that the accusation is wrong, then eventually people will back off about it. It's not that they don't. They know that they did something that bothers people, but they don't want to have to be, they don't want to have to face any consequences for it. That's all. And again, I'm not even saying, like, I think there are probably, I don't know that I could think of anything right now, but hypothetically, I can imagine there might be, like, maybe there are rape jokes that are, like, the way I see it, if the person making the joke is very clearly on the side of the survivor rather than the rapist, then potentially it could be, it would obviously still be offensive, but I think there's a chance that it could be, like, the yeah, that it could then, that people like me could be okay with it. But that joke, the joke from the Amazing Spider-Man 2 script, specific, like you read that and you're supposed to like imagine Peter tying her up and breaking down her will until she eventually agrees to sex. And it's like, how is this like? I get that he's saying, the author of the script is clearly saying that if you think that stalking is okay, then it's not that huge of a leap to say that, okay, let's say that he doesn't think it's rape, there's not a huge leap from stalking to tying someone up. And I, so clearly they're not, their joke is not, ha ha, rape is funny. Their joke is, if you, if, yeah, there's not a huge divide between, he's using shock humor, obviously, but that still doesn't, it's still a rape joke. It's like, excuse me. Now, that brings us to the third section, entitled Critic Sites, IMDb, and Wikipedia. Now, I guess my back is kind of starting to be an issue, so I think I'm going to go ahead and jump through the, there we go. Oh, there. I'm gonna skim the, let's see, 102. I noted 102 different places in this document, excuse me, that stuff I might want to go into. So, let's see. Okay, yeah, so I'm pretty sure this is a Rotten Tomatoes critic review. There's something undeniably disturbing about a story that is so plainly intended to degrade every character in it, and yet that is its charm. I think this is a really good, yeah. Waking up in the aftermath of a meth lab explosion might be less disorienting than watching this. And if you think there's no room for more, Neville Dean Taylor are probably a weekend and a bag of crack-filled pixie sticks away from proving you wrong. Crack-filled pixie sticks. I think that's an incredible way to, yeah, that's where the ideas for these movies come from. Crack-filled pixie sticks. Both exhilarating and exhausting, it falls just short of a fever pitch. Now, let's see. Crank High Voltage is a real celebration of the phrase, why not? It's big, loud, and brainless, and it's all the more glorious for it. One of the reviewers points out the movie's borderline pornographic. The movie feels like a form of aversion therapy designed to take the fun out of dumb. That's yeah, that's a really well, but like I don't quite agree with that, but I see where they're coming from. But that's really funny. That's a really fun, and that's really funny. That's a way to put it. Yeah. Let's see. Several of them say it's more than the first one, and let's see. Let's see. William Blake may have once stated that the road to excess leads to the palace of wisdom. But I'm guessing that if he ever had the opportunity to see the Crank films, he might have had second thoughts about that. Watching this movie is like trying to survive on Red Bull and Skittles. Might keep you up for a little bit, but before too long, you'll just want to throw up. This is such a good. This person gave it a 5 out of 5. Imagine a gonzo collaboration between Jean-Luc Godard, Michael Bay, and Tex Avery on a weekend meth binge, and you begin to get an idea of what writer-directors Mark Neveldine and Brad Taylor have up their sleeves. That's really well put. That's exactly right. Yeah. Crank High Voltage delivers everything it promises. If it were a politician, it'd have my vote. Have you ever chugged 3 Red Bulls right before a game of Grand Theft Auto? This ADD-infused action sequel is a bit like that, except even less family-friendly. It is as much influenced by Looney Tunes cartoons and Russ Meyer movies as it is by the anarchic new wave of action films, and it was edited apparently by someone with ADD. I don't think it's necessarily. I can imagine when critics use the term ADD about this movie, it's meant as a slight. I don't think it's necessarily a like you know I I'm almost certain Neville Dean Taylor think it's a positive about the movie, but I don't think that it should necessarily be seen as. I mean, think about how many movies we have that are very focused. I think it's fair that you know ADD crowd, for the ADD crowd to have some movies that are specifically tailored to them as well. Proof that you can make good movies based on video games as long as you don't bother making a video game first. Juice us up for Crank 3D. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean the this and the press start both of the press start movies are probably the only good video game movies I've seen. And in all 3 cases, they're not directly based on any specific game. Like, you know, the so yeah, I think that is very likely to be the. And to be fair, I've heard some people say that Detective Pikachu breaks the video video game movie curse. Maybe I'm not. I know almost nothing about Pokemon, so despite Ryan Reynolds, I'm probably never gonna watch that movie unless I don't know if someone just like says you have got to watch this movie. Maybe I will eventually, but I don't currently have any plans to. And I've also seen some people say that the Sonic, live action CG movie, it breaks that curse. I sincerely doubt that, but I'm not going to talk about it because I haven't watched it. I'm just going to say that if I had watched it, I think my opinion would be somewhat similar to that of Renegade Cut. So yeah, it it's one of the times where I don't think I would agree with Phil Mento liked it. I don't think I would. Let's see. If your idea of quality entertainment is a steady diet of video games, porn, and Mountain Dew commercials, Crank wants your business. Okay, that's 72 out of 102, so we're getting there. The chaotic onslaught of gruesomely violent and graphically sexual exploitation is so ugly and ceaseless this time that it eventually numbs and then bores the viewer. I 100% understand what they mean. I don't think, again, this time I watched a censored version. I don't think that was how I felt the first time I watched it, though. I think I enjoyed it throughout. I think they managed to balance it to where it doesn't get to be too much in at least these two Crank movies. I don't remember about Ghost Rider 2, and again, I haven't watched Gamer yet, but yeah. Oh, and did they maybe like write that, what's it called? Jonah Hex movie? I haven't watched that one. Yes, it's supposed to be dreadful, but it turns out that Crank High Voltage is genuinely insufferable. Surely something so gleefully disgusting shouldn't have to work this hard to make an impression. And this person gave it a D minus. Excuse me. So, and let's see. Yeah, and moving on, this is a Rotten Tomatoes user review. And this person says, if you're a snowflake, then this film is not for you. I really think it's hilarious that there are people using the term snowflake about people on the left when conservatives are much bigger snowflakes. Like, I'm not saying every single conservative is a snowflake. I'm sure in theory there's at least one person out there who's not. They don't tend to appear in news stories and on comment sections and such. But when conservatives are snowflakes, they are the flakiest, snowiest snowflakes in all of history. Like when the left gets upset about something, it's something that actually hurts people. When conservatives get upset about something, it's the most ridiculous, like, non-issue, or it's something where the thing that they're fighting against actual progress. They're fighting against people actually getting help that they need. Let's see. And Yeah, this person says the movie. Yeah, I'm just gonna read aloud some of this. A train wreck of a film, filled to bursting with senseless action, surreal non sequiturs, and an edgy sense of humor that is adolescent at best. And yeah, it doesn't seem like they liked it. Surreal non sequiturs. That's a yeah. The Godzilla fight parody thing, and the flashback with the talk show. Surreal non sequitur. That's a good way of putting that. It's interesting for some of these, like, if you just read the excuse me, what they're describing, it's like, well, yeah, that's what the movie is. You can't tell from right away if they think that it's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, some of the critics will just say, it's just nonstop action and there's almost no plot and there's just, and it's like, are you are you saying it's a bad thing? Because I legitimately can't tell before. Anyway, and laughably and knowingly preposterous, cheerfully on PC, and violent in a way that makes the myriad slap-happy deaths of Wile E. Coyote seem downright dull in comparison. Now, let's see. Oh, sorry, those were Metacritic critic reviews. And see, I think this is worth noting. This is a Metacritic user review. Person gave it a 3 out of 10. Utter shit. I like the idea of a preposterous, un-PC action movie, but this was just badly done in every respect. I think it's noteworthy that there are people who want this, who want a preposterous, un-PC action movie, but don't think that this, I think there are probably, yeah, and I hope that they, other movies, do get made that has this sort of, and I really, like, seriously, if you're like commenting on someone else's review of this movie, just because they didn't like it doesn't mean that they have a political problem with. There are plenty of people who love the non-PC aspects of it, who still have, you know, let's see. There we go. And I mean, personally, I definitely, there's definitely some. I mean, I already said I like the show Married with Children, so you know that I do like, quite a bit of non-PC humor. It's just, there are. It's important why you're doing it and how you're doing it. But like I said, I'm not gonna talk too much about that in this. Let's see. Yeah, and these are the taglines. He was dead, but he got better. Stay charged, stay alive. Fully charged. Those are quite good. Yeah. And let's see. This is IMDb trivia. At Comic-Con 2011, star Efren Ramirez revealed that there will be a Crank 3, but Jason Statham may not return as Chev was burnt alive. As of 2018, Crank 3 hasn't happened. I mean, I don't see why they couldn't bring him back again after, considering. I mean, in the first one, it seemed like a pretty definitive death as well. But I think, I don't know, if they make a third movie, they definitely do have to think of excuse me, a what's the word? Like they have to come up with another way of, like, like by the end of the second movie, by the end of the end credits of the second movie, he has his original heart back, and like he opens his eyes and you can hear the heart beating, so he survived being burned to death, and his heart still, like the doctor said, he believes that he could put the heart back and get it to work again. So he has his original heart. Although, does that mean that he's no longer as super strong as he was in parts of this? Because I guess that was because of the juice from the other heart. And anyway, they would have to come up with something, you know. And I don't know where you go from there. First, you have the poison, where two full deadly doses of it. The Carlito says in the first movie, we use it on horses. He survived something that usually kills horses, who have quite a powerful system. They yeah, and two doses of it apparently meant that he could you know, survive for a crazy long time, and even survive the fall from the helicopter. Don't they say that I'm not going to quote, I'm not going to call him by his actual name, obviously, but David Carradine's character in this, don't they say he's had Chev's heart for 3 weeks? Don't they say that fairly late into the film? That means that he's had it for that long and not have to keep his adrenaline going. At least there's no indication that he's also been keeping his adrenaline going all that time. So it would appear that yeah, he did. So the heart doesn't even need that anymore. So he has his original heart back, which is, crazy powerful, and doesn't apparently no longer needs adrenaline, and he survived being burned to death. The Yeah, I don't really know. First you have the poison, then you have a replacement heart. I don't know. I don't know where you go from there. Another replacement heart would just seem like, well, we already did this. Even if the new heart has some kind of other, yeah, I don't know. But I mean, if they make it and it looks incredibly good, and I might watch it in theaters. I don't. Let's see. In 2006 and 2009, I mean, I don't think I did not watch the first two movies in theaters. I don't think the trailer for the third, like the trailer for the first one, I was like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Maybe I'll watch it at some point. But I wasn't gonna I wasn't gonna shell out. I almost sounded like shill out. That's not, no. But I wasn't gonna pay theater ticket money to see, not based on that first trailer, not the trailer for the first one. And then the second movie, I mean, yeah, in 2009, when the second movie, I remember saying, oh, they made a sequel to that movie. I hadn't watched the first movie, so of course I wasn't going to go to the theater to watch a movie that I hadn't watched the previous movies. I very rarely do that. So, but, by now I have. And let's see. Yeah, and after Crank High Voltage was released, Nadine Taylor announced that there would be a third film with Jason Statham once again returning as Jeff Jellies. As of 2019, the third film hasn't happened. And yeah, and it also, the extra scenes during the end credits hinted at a possible Crank 3. I I quite like this. Someone noted in the quote section, repeated line various, fuck you, Chelius. It really, yeah. Let's see. I like the bit there at the start with John Delancey, you know, yeah, basically summing up what, yeah, just describing the ending of the first movie, basically, as it would look from onlookers. And let's see. Yeah, I think this is worth noting. I did not know the following before reading. Oh, sorry, just briefly. Yeah, that was Lauren Holly playing the psychiatrist, wasn't it? I like her in this and other stuff. She is very funny when that's like when a role calls for her being funny. She's very funny. And let's see, yeah, yeah. This is from Wikipedia. Wikipedia entry for the movie. Production. The modest success of Crank at the box office and on home video had opened the possibility of a sequel for Mark Neveldine and Brian Taylor. Even so, Neveldine and Taylor initially refused to direct one when approached by producer Skip Williamson of Lakeshore Entertainment, explaining that they had already quote-unquote killed Chip Chelios at the end of Crank, making the idea of a sequel preposterous. Instead, Neveldine and Taylor agreed to write the screenplay and stay on as producers. After the script was completed, however, they agreed to direct as they believed no other director could possibly make what they had written. Quote, we were going to write it, produce it, and move on to something else, but by the time the script was finished, we had fallen in love with it, and we were not going to let anyone else touch it, said Taylor. Excuse me. So they too say that he died at the end of the first movie. I mean, the thing that it should have killed him, but a lot of the things that he does in the movie should have killed him. But he lands on the sidewalk and he blinks and you hear the heartbeat. Or was that only added later for like DVD once they made the sequel to like rationalize that thing from that other thing that I can't mention here without spoiling that thing? I don't know. If so, I haven't seen it written anywhere that that was the case. And I think that is going to be it for now. I believe I've said everything that I especially wanted to. So yeah, in closing, like I said, I really admire I I like the non-conventional visuals. Both when filming and when editing, which are two very different processes. And I think Statham is ideal for the role. I think, I mean, there is basically everyone in the cast does what they can. I would say it almost always pays off, and certainly I can't think of a single person that appears on camera in this where you could point to their performance and say that they weren't at least trying to, that they didn't give it, you know, that they didn't throw their energy and passion in there. And it's and yeah, I think that just you know, I love much, you know, I love films that are closer to being art as well. I love this and I love those. I really do think that, I mean, I think it's ridiculous to say that they don't have talent. I think at most you could say that they're using the talent in the wrong way. They're one-trick ponies. and that sort of thing. But I don't know how you can look at. I've seen movies that are way that have way more, that like some critics will say, oh, this is an amazing movie, and I watch it and it's like, I mean, I guess I can kind of see what you mean here, here, and here, but it's really not. This definitely had a lot of, like, and I don't just mean the fact that it had, I know some people praise Requiem for a Dream, in part because of the, excuse me, the fact that the it uses some techniques of filming and editing that we're not very used to seeing in mainstream movies. I don't think that automatically makes it good, but I do think that both Requiem for a Dream and this use these unconventional methods to great effect. That they're not just throwing it out there, they're using it to give you an idea of what it feels like. Requiem for a Dream. Yeah, in these movies, what it the in Requiem for a Dream and Crank 1, it's what it feels like to be on these drugs. And then in this, it's what it feels like to have that much electricity surging through your body. It's these kinds of things. Yeah. And I mean, I've seen movies, excuse me, made by people who are just like, let's try to provoke some people. Let's do something weird. And where I get bored way earlier in the film, and with these, I don't get bored watching a Neville D. Taylor movie, and here's hoping that that's gonna, you know, knock on wood, that that's still gonna be true with Gamer. But yeah, they are, you know, they, give me a second. They manage to balance the kind of crazy stuff and out there stuff with still making, like, if the entirety of a Crank movie was just constantly, but there is just enough of, like, it slows down and gives you a little room to breathe, like when Chev catches up with Eve, when Rhea and Venus, you know, meet back up, and these sorts of things. It doesn't go on for forever, but it does slow it down. It does give you a little breathing room. I see. It's been an eternity since I watched Michael Bay. A fact I'm very proud of. But if I recall, he does not give you any room to breathe. He's just constantly moving, which, at least if his movies were like 90 minutes, but they're like 2.5 hours, it's insane. I don't know how anyone does it. Lindsay Ellis has apparently watched the Transformer movies a number of times. I don't know how she does it. She just, it's wild to me. But you know, the ones I haven't watched all his movies. Once again, something I take a lot of pride in. But the ones of, yeah, the movies he's made that I've watched, it's just like I can appreciate. Just he wants to keep the energy up. He wants to make sure a lot is happening. He wants to make sure the camera is always dynamic and such. But his movies are just unbearable. They're obnoxious. And that's just not how I feel about Crank 1 and 2, and I'm pretty sure that's not how I feel about Ghost Rider either. But I only watched that movie once, and that was like 9 years ago or something. When was that movie in theater? Something like that. So, but yeah, but I'm not making any excuses for the rape scene in the first one, and they definitely don't need to be as offensive as they are. And it's this thing, Vern points out in his review of the second one. Actually, excuse me, I think I might be able to find it so that I can directly. Here we go. I don't think this means Neville Dean Taylor are racist. I think this is one of those things where it's, ha ha ha, it's so racist, can you believe we put that in there? Ha ha, it's so terrible. Which is in a way, yeah, worse, because that means they know better. And I think there's an argument to be made for that, yeah. But once again, I'm not saying that it's automatically wrong to make edgy jokes. It's just, you know, I don't know that I think an argument could be made that the ones in the Crank movies, it would be like, one of the big problems is that they aren't actually, they're not saying anything, they're not communicating anything with the joke, they're just being really offensive. And I think an argument could be made that edgy jokes are okay when, but only when, you are communicating something, you know, with that, when you're not just saying something really offensive. But yeah, I believe that is actually, you know, I'm just briefly gonna, the I have the cover, I have the covers for both movies, and I mean, let's see. So the one for the first has this cool blue color, which, I don't know. I feel like, considering that I feel like that kind of thing makes more sense for like a movie that's about like an assassin going on. Of, I feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense for the kind of intense stuff. But then they do have. Let's see. I gotta get a little closer to the camera here. You know, here they have that line where, there it is, where you have some flashes of the really intense and ridiculous stuff that happens. I mean, I think it would be a bit much if the entire cover was that color or had images as, yeah. And then there's the cover of the second movie. I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw it, you know, I bought this online, but I could see the cover before I bought it. When I first saw that this cover was this color, I mean, I almost immediately completely decided against buying it. What is that? It looks like vomit yellow, is bile, I guess. I do not know why you would ever choose, like, it looks like the color that it, like, that's the color for like a warning, like a toxic waste kind of warning label or something. That is not the way you get people to watch your movie. I don't know, maybe it was a decision made by the German censors. They were like, they looked back at the Frankenstein monster they created with all the censorship, and they were like, don't sell this to anyone, please. I don't know. I feel like that makes more sense than anything else I can think of right now. Why would you use such a sickly color? It just, yeah. Blue, electrical blue would have made a lot of sense for the second one. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching, as I enjoyed watching.